Well, Jesus introduces him a second time himself. Look at chapter 8, verse 12. And this is the second great I am. And in my Bible, I just wrote by 635 that Jesus is the bread of life, and I should hunger for him. Secondly, in chapter 8, verse 12, here's the second time Jesus in this book introduces himself. And he publicly introduces himself, and I wish we had time. In fact, this afternoon, we may have time, and I don't know what Paul's plan, but I might show this, because every one of these I ams, Jesus introduces himself in a unique spot he picked. And this one, chapter 8, verse 12, he picked the climax of the greatest and happiest festival Israel celebrated, when they had the great lighting of the four menorahs. Four menorahs, those are the 7-branch candle stands. And they would build them 45 to 50 feet high in the temple proper. They would take all the old priest white linen clothes and make wicks out of them after these guys. You couldn't throw away a priest's clothing. It was so holy. And so they would make wicks. And they would make these 5-story high, 7-branch candelabras. And they would fill them with oil. And for one glorious night, they would illumine the entire city of Jerusalem in Jesus' day with these huge 5-story high, in the tallest part of the city, the temple compound. They would illumine the city. And as they did that, in that great ceremony, everybody, hundreds of thousands of people would come, and they would, at night, the people would quote psalms, and they would do all their folk dances, and the great teachers, the greatest teachers of Israel, would come and would dance folk dances singing the psalms. Can you imagine being to a party with 200,000 or 300,000 people and having Charles Stanley dancing around singing psalms, and Chuck Swindoll dancing around, and James Montgomery Boyce, who's now dancing in heaven, and John MacArthur, and whoever else used, Billy Graham. Can you imagine them all dancing and singing psalms? How exciting it would be. That's what they did all night long. And the next morning, as the last wick went out, Jesus stood up in chapter 8, verse 12. Look what he said. And Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He that follows me will not walk in darkness. And all the people looked up, and those wicks were just black and cold and dark because the oil had run out. And what Jesus was saying is, hey, this was great for one night, but if you come to me, you'll never be in the dark the rest of your life. Now you say, what do you mean by that? Well, most people fear the dark. Most people think of darkness and death and, demons, and all that stuff kind of runs together, and we don't. I mean, how many of you would walk through a graveyard in pitch black dark? I mean, honestly, no matter how brave you are, 99% of people wouldn't do it because we just don't like the dark. Hell is going to be the blackness of darkness forever, it says in the book of Jude. You know what Jesus said? I am the light of the world. I will light your darkened soul. Apart from me is only impenetrable darkness. I am the light. I've settled the darkness of fear. I've settled the darkness of death. I've settled the darkness of dying. It's all settled. If you'll walk with me, I'll light your path for life. And by the way, he doesn't just light the doorway just before death. He says, I'll light the whole pathway so you can walk through life confidently knowing exactly where you should be, what you should be doing, who you should be with. One of the great joys in life is confidently knowing that you are walking in the Spirit, obeying God. I was thinking as we were walking around last night, we're in one of the campsites, and, I kind of walk around at night. I walked that big party they had last night out there. They had all those hors d'oeuvres. No one invited me over. I walked by that table 3 times, and no one invited me over. But they all thought I was going to the bathhouse, and I was. But I walked around, and I thought, as a young man, how often I used to walk around this lake over here. Because remember, my dad, his car only knew where to come up here. In his weeks of vacation from Oldsmobile, he always came here. And so this is where I grew up, here. And I was telling someone at the bathhouse while we were waiting in that cold line before we took our showers this morning, I said, my job was I worked in the laundry. That's where I worked. I could fold towels and pillowcases in my sleep. From when I was old enough to stand on a milk bucket, my mom would set me there, and I had to fold towels. I don't know why they had all those towels. I don't think you must have provided them in the old days, Uncle Johnny. But whatever. I used to be here, but when I got my time off, I would walk around the lake, and I would pray. Because there's one thing I knew, because I would watch people up here, and I said, Lord, there's one thing that's going to affect the rest of my life, and that is the Lord has 3 areas. We have to get our master, our mate, and our mission. Our master is Jesus Christ, and then we have to find a mate that is going to honor and glorify Him, and then together we accomplish His mission. And I said, Lord, I don't want to get the mission messed up by getting the wrong mate. Will you show me your will? And I remember in 1983, the first time I ever met Bonnie Marie, a school teacher at Bob Jones University. I'd never seen her in my life. I was there 8 years. She was there for 5. with the 7,200 students, it's easy to not know someone. And I remember seeing her for the first time, and I looked at her and I said, "You're who I prayed for my whole life." I mean, I had prayed that the Lord would provide a woman of God, that I would walk in the light and know His will and follow His way. And I used to ask Him that walking around this lake week after week during the summer. I'd say, "Lord, I want to serve You, I want to obey You, I want to be Your servant all my days, but I don't want to make a mistake," especially in the area that I saw so many of my friends make the mistakes, because a lot of kids I grew up with married their high school sweethearts and divorced them, or married their college sweetheart and are the unhappiest people in the world. And I said, "I don't want, it would ruin the ministry, you know. How would you like to be preaching and your wife sitting in the front row like this?" I mean, wouldn't that be a blessing, right? "Hi, meet my wife." And so, I said, "Lord," and you know what? The Lord says, "If you follow me, you will walk in the light."